They told me not to come. So I wrapped the gifts, drove them where they'd be needed, and posted the receipts.
They told me, very plainly, not to come. It was a short message. It landed like a closed door. When my daughter wrote, "We don't want you here this year," I folded the paper towel I'd been holding and smiled for the room, while my heart did something that felt like breaking and mending at once. If you like these stories, please subscribe to Soul Bite YouTube channel. It helps us share more. I've spent most of my adult life making holiday dinners and folding into them little favors and secrets, the way bakers tuck fruit in a cake. I remember the way the kitchen light looks at noon in December, the dust motes like tiny confetti, the smell of coffee that seems to say, "Come in." Our house used to be the place everyone came when the weather turned hard and the roads turned mean. My mother taught me to set an extra place because you never know who might need a seat. That lesson stuck in me like a warm sweater. My daughter Anna is in her 40s now. She has the same eyes as her father, a quick laugh, and a calendar that looks like a city map. Her husband Mark keeps spreadsheets for grocery lists and small crises. They are good people. They are busy people. My grandchildren live 3 blocks away and smell like baby shampoo and crayons. We've had our disagreements. We always have. Mostly they were small things. Comments on parenting, on recipes, on the way I arrange flowers. Small things that puff up when everyone is tired and the house gets loud. But small things can gather like snow. They pile up, and one morning you notice there is no place left to step. The trouble had been growing quietly for a while. It started with little notes that felt like tiny stings. "Mom, could you not post about gifts this year?" One text read, "It makes us uncomfortable." Another time, Mark joked that my holiday gifts were always too much for what I could actually afford. The tone of those jokes was frantic and cheap. I tried to laugh. I tried to ask why. I tried to be nimble. But the questions kept coming back like a draft under the door. I chose to buy their gifts anyway because buying the gifts had become my way of keeping things gentle. It was my love in paper and bows. 2 days before Christmas, Anna called. Her voice was shorter than I expected, like someone who had swallowed a reprimand. "Mom, Mark and I have talked," she said, "and we think it's better if you don't come this year." "What? Why?" I asked. I heard my voice, steady but small, because asking felt like holding out my hand and asking them to take it. "It's complicated," she answered. "We'll drop off the kids. We'll pick up the presents. Please don't make a scene." Then she ended the call. I sat down at the kitchen table. The gifts I'd wrapped were stacked in a neat, small mountain on the counter. There was a sweater for Anna, a wooden truck for Sammy, a cookbook for Mark. Each gift had a thought tied to it like a ribbon. The thought felt suddenly absurd. I thought about walking away, about letting the calendar pass with a hole in it. I thought about the years my mother left ashes in the fireplace so it would feel like someone had sat there all day. Habit has a way of telling you what to do, even when your heart is telling you something else. I made coffee. I set out the shopping receipts on the table and smoothed them like I was ironing them flat. The numbers looked like a ledger of love. I stared at them and a plan slid into place, quiet and firm. I decided to give the gifts away. Not back to the store, not into the attic under a pile of quilts. I drove to the shelter that had been a refuge for people in our town for years. I stepped inside with my boxes and my receipts and a small, steady voice that said, "These are for anyone who needs them." The woman behind the desk looked at the packages and at me and smiled like she was holding a secret too. "You did a good thing," she said. "These will mean something." Then she asked if I wanted a receipt for a donation. I said yes. When I came home, I did something that felt braver than I expected. I posted the receipts to a neighborhood group I belonged to, along with a short note. I wrote simply, "These are the gifts I bought for my family. They no longer want me there. I gave them where they'll be used." I thought about not posting it. I thought about keeping the quiet like a private, warming coal. But there was a kind of honesty in sharing that felt necessary. It was not about grandstanding. It was about choosing kindness over anger and showing the people who were watching that generosity has many faces. The reaction surprised me. People I barely knew sent private messages. A neighbor named June wrote, "You did the right thing." A woman from church sent a picture of 2 little girls with scarves from my donation. Someone else wrote simply, "Thank you." It was not applause I wanted. It was the small human thing that feels like being recognized. My phone buzzed for a while that evening. Not everyone agreed. There were stiff words from people who thought I had shamed my family publicly. I read them and then I put the phone away. I had taken my stand. Now I would live with the consequences. Midway through this story, some of you might be wondering why they turned me away at all. There is a small answer and a larger one, and both matter. The small answer is this: money. Not in the sense you might immediately think. It was not that I tried to buy my way in, it was that my gifts had become a yardstick. My daughter and son-in-law felt judged by what I offered and suspicious of my motives. They thought the gifts came with a message. They thought that by giving, I was saying something about the life they had built. The larger answer has to do with fear. When families change, people panic. Old roles feel up for grabs, and the people closest to you sometimes react badly. They worry that the world you both live in is shifting and that love will become negotiable. In their fear, they chose a harshness that afternoon. After the post, my son-in-law, Mark, called. He was quieter than usual. He said, "I saw the receipts you posted." I heard his breath over the line, like someone who had been running. "Why did you post them?" he asked. "Because I wanted to show where my heart landed," I said. "Because the gifts needed a home, Mark. And because I wanted to know I did the right thing." He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Anna is upset." I told him I knew. The community's response changed some small things. The shelter used my donations to put a family into temporary housing for a month. They used the cookbook and the sweater and the truck like threads in a different kind of holiday cloth. The receipts, when pinned to a bulletin board in the shelter's office, became a reminder that one person's disappointment can be another person's safety. Neighbors brought over casseroles, not because they thought I'd asked for them, but because they knew what it felt like to be turned away. A woman left a card with no name and a short note that said, "This is for you. You are loved." I dried my hands on a tea towel and felt something that might have been gratitude or relief. It was quiet and fierce. There was a point, about a week later, where I began to understand how small acts can change the story you are living. My grandchildren, Sam and Lily, came to our house the day after school. They bounced in with pockets full of pine cones and faces full of questions. "Grandma," Sam said, holding up a pine cone like a trophy, "why didn't you come?" He looked at me with the pure, clean confusion only children have. I told him the truth I could give him then. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that are hard to understand. Lily hugged my knee. "You gave our things away?" she asked. "That's nice." Her voice had no edge to it. It was so simple that for a moment all the complicated parts seemed to fall away. That small, clean moment changed me more than a public argument ever could. The children kept visiting. They brought art they had made. They ate my soup and asked why my hair smelled like peppermint. They did not carry the anger of adults, they carried the now. I learned something important in the weeks after we were uninvited. I learned that belonging is not only about being in a house at a holiday table. Belonging can be about being part of a life that shares in the smallness of day to day. It can be stitched together by phone calls and visits and a postcard sent in a mundane month. Eventually, Anna called me. Her voice was softer, and I could hear a kind of weariness that made my chest ache. She said, "Mom, I've been thinking." I waited. I let the quiet sit between us like a cushion. "I'm sorry about how we handled it," she said. "We were overwhelmed and we hurt you." I heard her breathing, and I heard something else, a willingness. "Would you come over for brunch next Sunday? We would like to see you." I felt my shoulders drop, not because everything was fixed, but because the floor had stopped spinning. I said, "Yes." I said it slowly, like a prayer of ordinary things. When we met, it was not a grand reconciliation with speeches and confessions. It was a slow, careful conversation over eggs and toast. Anna told me about the pressure she felt. Mark apologized for the words he'd used. I told them how it had felt to be handed a closed door. We said things that were small and true. There were tears. There was laughter. We ate slices of orange and spoke of the children's school plays and of the old dog that used to come to our house and snooze under the tree. I did not demand they see that posting the receipts had been a lesson. I let it be what it had been, an act of my choosing. Not everyone applauded what I did, and not everyone came around. Some friends told me I had been too public. Some family members went silent. But I also found that when you choose generosity instead of anger, you build a different kind of life. You draw new people close. The shelter sent a thank you note that made me cry. A woman I had never met hugged me at church and said, "You gave my children the warmest Christmas they've had in years." That kept me company on quiet nights. There are things I wish I'd done differently. I wish, sometimes, that I had been more patient before posting the receipts. I wish I had sat with Anna and asked more questions and listened even better. But there are other things I would not change. I would not change the decision to give because giving was what soothed me. It was what made me feel useful when the world had put me in a strange corner. We finished the year with a new pattern. We still had our old rituals, but some had shifted. We set boundaries in ways we had not before. We learned that love can be held firm and also let go. We found that a family can fracture and then reshape into something that includes new forms of respect and care. When my grandchildren came over this Christmas, I hung a small ornament on the tree that I had made from a pine cone Sam gave me. It was not grand. It was perfect. We sang a silly song off-key and passed plates around. At one point, Anna reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She did not need to say anything. We both knew what had been said. If there is a lesson in all this, it is not that posting receipts will fix your life or that generosity always buys back affection. The lesson is quieter. It is that dignity matters. It is that when someone closes a door on you, the answer does not always have to be to throw your weight against it. You can do something else. You can take what you had prepared and make it mean for someone who needs it more. You can choose to be kind in a way that changes another person's winter into warmth. I am not a perfect person. I am a woman who has loved too loudly and also too quietly. I will probably be clumsy again. But I like to think I have learned to choose generosity over bitterness more often than not. I like to think I have learned to keep an extra place at the table, even if the seat is empty that year. If this story settles with you, if it makes you think about your own places and doors, then I am grateful. The world is full of people who need a little unexpected kindness. If you have the means and the heart, consider giving what you have. It might not muffle the hurt. It might not fix every relationship. but it will warm someone's winter. So that was my Christmas. Quiet, a little strange, and actually, in a way, fuller than I expected. I had my soup, my knitting, and a stack of thank you notes from a shelter office that smelled faintly of pine. I had visits from children who loved me without caveat. I had neighbors who brought casseroles and a church member who left me a card. I had, most of all, the knowledge that when a door closes, another path can open. All of this matters because it reminds me that kindness is not weak, it is a decision. And sometimes, deciding to be kind is the strongest thing we can do.